All right, we're going to get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining this month's GAAPP Academy. This is our 5th session. Today's topic is Grow Your Advocacy Community. And before we get started, I just wanted to go through a few housekeeping items. Please make sure if you are in one of the interpretation channels, if you will be listening in Spanish, please click on the interpretation icon and select Spanish. Everyone else, please enter the English channel so you can hear everything fully and completely. We'll just wait a few seconds for everybody to get into the appropriate channel. And that icon is right at the bottom of the page. It should say interpretation, and it should be near where you see all of the controls for the meeting.
Para los que quieren escuchar este webinar en español, por favor, vayan al icono de abajo. Hay un icono abajo y pueden seleccionar español en ese icono.
I think that I can hear the Spanish interpretation in English, so I think we might not be in the correct rooms right now.
No, we are. She was translating what I was saying because I was speaking Spanish, so we are good.
Oh, okay. It was a little confusing. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully everybody is in the appropriate channel. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, we will address questions at the end. Please use the Q&A tab in the icons. And you also, chat is enabled, but we would appreciate if you could use Q&A so we don't miss any of your questions. I'd also like to take a moment to thank our sponsors for today, AstraZeneca and GSK, for their support of GAAPP Academy this year. And today's presentation is brought to you by Samantha Hurley, who is the Director of Client Services at Boz Advisors. We're going to talk about something that's important to so many of our members, and that's growing your advocacy community. And Sam is going to be able to share some techniques and some guidance with her experience at Boz. And I'd love to turn it over to Sam now.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right. Present. Switch here. Wonderful. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful to be here with you all today. Before we get started, I wanted to go ahead and send a big thank you to GAAPP for bringing us all together around growing your advocacy community. What an amazing opportunity to seek to grow together, leaning on each other's experience and expertise. And we encourage you to meet with GAAPP or other organizations here after this discussion to learn more about how their organization has grown and is seeking to grow. There may be opportunities to share ideas and resources and more, and it's a win-win for everyone here as we look to take these tips and put them into action. And so with that, I'll do a quick introduction. My name is Samantha Hurley. I am a Director of Client Services here at Boz Advisors, a global patient advocacy and engagement firm. And my role at Boz is working with patients, advocates, patient advocacy groups, and pharmaceutical companies to help incorporate the patient voice and experience into the drug development continuum and beyond, to work towards a vision of reduced time to diagnosis, increased shared decision-making, better care, and ultimately improved quality of life for patients and care partners. Before Boz, I was actually a chemical engineer for the first 5 years of my career in project management and continuous improvement. During that time, I discovered that my love of health and wellness was not a pastime to be kept for the evenings and weekends, but rather what I wanted to dedicate my career to. So I left engineering, received my master's of public health, and began my health career at Endocrine Society. If you haven't heard of Endocrine Society, it's a healthcare provider association with a patient advocacy arm. There I worked in education and then business development and strategic partnerships, where I doubled our revenue and our educational programming over the course of 2 years. I was then picked up by a medical education company to help run strategic partnerships, helping bring the patient voice to healthcare provider education, to hopefully help healthcare providers see that, you know, the individual isn't a case study about a 34-year-old woman with X, Y, and Z labs, but rather Donna, a mom of 3 who has an entire life and goals and dreams outside of that 15-minute clinic visit. And that role, I expanded partnerships from 33 patient advocacy group partners to over 100 in 1 year. And then I moved to VAS, where I've now been since March. A few personal things about me. In the middle of the slide here, you can see me and my husband on our honeymoon in Italy, where we biked for 7 days across Italy. So we're both very outdoorsy. My husband is a foreign service officer. And so I actually live in Mexico City right now. So if you're ever here, feel free to shoot me an email, as well as I lived in El Salvador last year. So bienvenidos a todos que habla español. Estoy muy emocionada para estar aquí contigo. We have 2 dogs named Waffles and Barley, and we love being outside exploring Mexico City. So I'm really excited to be here with you all today, and I can't wait to discuss more about growing your advocacy community. 50 years ago, just to start the scene, 50 years ago, James Lord wrote that organizations have no needs. The idea is that people have needs, and society has needs, and organizations have solutions. And the key to growing is to identify the needs of your organization, or the needs your organization seeks to address, to develop a plan to offer solutions to those problems, and then to invite others to invest in the solution. And today we hope to help you grow through 7 actionable steps. Note, please don't feel like you need to take furious notes during our conversation. We will provide all of this information to you all through the recording. We're also planning to develop a handout that we'll share with GAAPP to share with you all as well. We've also designed this presentation to be in checklist format. It's likely you've already checked a few or many of the boxes, so please use these as a jumping off point and tailor your approach as best suits your organization's needs. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So here you'll find our key topics for today's discussion. There will be a Q&A session at the end, so please feel free to write down any of the questions you have or put them in the Q&A box, and I'll be happy to answer those at the end of the presentation. And as you can see here in our table of contents, the first thing we'll start off with is how to create a strong brand. So before you begin to grow your advocacy community, it's key to ensure that you create a strong brand. As you can see on the right-hand side, there are numerous components to creating a strong brand, like identity, trust, design, value, and more. On the left-hand side, you'll see we've created a checklist for tactical ways that you can create a strong brand. You may have checked all of these. You may have checked 4 of them. You know, this is just to provide helpful context to help you check all of these. So first, you want to think about defining your brand identity. So what do people think of when they think of your organization? Do you want them to think about your educational offerings, your presence with governmental bodies, your support services, maybe something else entirely? You'll then, once you have that brand identity, you want to identify where your target audience is, so you can meet people where they are, thinking of who would benefit most from your offerings. For this, it is just as key to think about who you will not serve at this time, as it is to be thinking about who you will serve, especially if you're a smaller or newer organization. Being hyper-specific about who you are and who you serve will help you as you think about your value proposition and strategy. So for your value proposition, think about what makes you unique and what makes you special. Why should people want to engage with your organization instead of, say, another organization? And this will help you articulate why individuals should want to engage from the first time, as well as continuing engaging with you for the long haul. Many of you likely already have a strategy, but if not, we recommend outlining a strategy that specifically touches on what you'll be prioritizing and what you will not be prioritizing, being cognizant of the size and resources of your organization. It's also key to be thinking about how frequently you want to come back to this strategy and be thinking about, do you want to have that strategic priority plan Do you want to do it every year? Do you want to do it every 3 years? So coming back together and saying, is this still what we're prioritizing, or have we grown? And do we have new priorities now? Or does our community have new needs that might change those priorities we wrote maybe a year ago? It's also key to think about your logo and design, so that visual representation of your organization that your community will recognize. After this call, it might be worth taking a look at your website and your logo and evaluating whether you think that it accurately represents your organization visually, or if you might want to make a few tweaks. Please note, your brand will change as you grow. Uber started off by only offering ride services, and now they offer Uber Eats, scooters, and more. The process of refining your brand can be and should be done iteratively as your community grows. So now we're going to talk about how you find your people and grow your community by starting simple. So once you have your brand, it's time to find your people and grow your community. Whether your current community is 5 people, 5,000 people, 500,000 people, the easiest place to begin raising awareness of your organization is with your existing community. So you can provide them with organizational materials to share with their friends, family, and network. You can provide HCPs in your network with materials to share with their patients. This is an easy way to ensure that patients have materials they need where they need them, as well as to make sure that your organization is getting into their hands and they're aware that you are there to support them. It truly is a win-win. You could also have your community follow you on social media and like and share your posts. We won't be going through how to create a robust social media plan as a part of this presentation, but there is an amazing GAAPP Academy webinar titled Adapting Your Social Media. So if you are looking to do that and you think that's a fit for your organization, we highly recommend you check that out. Now, as you raise awareness of your organization, it's common that interested individuals will come to your website to learn more. As such, it's key to do a quality check of your website, like you're a new person visiting it for the first time. And this could be a great activity for a friend or a family member to do to investigate if your materials are easy or hard to find, if there are any broken links, if your website feels fresh and new, or if it feels a bit outdated. And that can help you understand what tweaks and edits you might want to make to your website to make sure that when people come to your website, it's easy to use, they know that you're present and active in the community, and it makes sure that the first visit is just the first of many visits. Third, here we have information about identifying where your community is and how you can reach them. All of these bullets may not be exactly what your organization needs. Think of them as thought starters about what you can be doing, and then really select and prioritize the ones that make the most sense for your organization and your community. For example, maybe you want to engage with sister organizations in the space around where their community goes for information and how they're engaging with their community. You can also consider engaging with HCPs to learn more about where they hear individuals are going for materials and what materials they regularly ask for. Note, this will not be one size fits all. For example, there are numerous social media platforms that different populations use. If you're seeking to serve a younger population, you may be wanting to be on TikTok, where if you're seeking an older population, you may decide to not be on TikTok. So really tailor the approach to wherever your community is, making sure that you're meeting them where they are. So now that you've started simple and checked the boxes relevant for your organization, let's talk about how you can build from there. So if you have the resources to do activities that require a bit more time and manpower, we recommend you consider these opportunities on the left-hand side. The first opportunity here is partnering with other organizations to create disease awareness campaigns, educational materials, etc., where you can extend the reach and recognition of your organization and your partners' organizations by cross-promoting your co-created resources. This will not only enable you to address the needs in your community, but also increase awareness of your disease and who you are as an organization. You can also cross-promote each other's materials to maximize the utilization of those materials and avoid duplication to create the largest impact for the community. If a sister organization has an incredible shared decision-making material, why create one yourself? Maybe you have recommendations and there's an opportunity to tailor and update it. But if there is materials already out there and available, we highly recommend connecting with organizations and seeing if there's opportunities for you to share those with your community to be delivering the most value as possible. You can also participate in the following activities in the middle here to expand awareness of your organization. Maybe you want to be more active on social media or participate more in conferences. Perhaps you want to create additional organization-focused materials and distribute those materials in clinics, hospitals, etc. Again, these are just jumping off points. Feel free to brainstorm other ways to expand your awareness-raising opportunities with your community. Lastly, you can make your mark on social media by establishing your communication lines with your audience. You can encourage your audience to follow you and then retain your followers and grow your followership by creating meaningful, compelling, and intentional posts that are in line with your brand identity, design, and provide value to your members. As your community grows from the previous step, it's the perfect time to be thinking about how you can engage with your community to maximize your growth and offerings. To do this, we recommend thinking about all of the goals your organization has, per your priorities from slide 1, and then the needs your community has, as we discussed when we first started, as well as the skills your community members have. From there, you can match the community members' strengths to the organizational goals and create a volunteerism program, which we've included a few bullets on here. And so if you need, if you're looking for individuals in your community to be drafting and submitting sponsorship requests, thinking about individuals who love writing and are good at writing and love even research, they could be a perfect fit to support you with that. Now, with this formal volunteerism program, one thing to keep in mind is that volunteers want to know how they're making an impact and how their time is benefiting the community and the organization. As such, we recommend sharing regular updates with your community. These can be personalized, like one-on-one calls or text messages, emails, or they can be more generalized, like a monthly newsletter, for example, to provide information to the individuals in a lower-lived way. If it feels like your organization is at the right time to move forward with a formal volunteerism program, I encourage you to watch another GAAPP Academy webinar titled Volunteer Management. So as a partner to formal volunteerism, it's also worth thinking about informal volunteerism. Informal volunteerism can be especially helpful if your organization is new and you don't have a large community you could call on to be a volunteer. Or if you have a specific technical need that your volunteers may not have, but someone else in your network may have. So informal volunteerism can always be paired with formal volunteerism, and informal volunteers can morph into formal volunteers. So here are a few examples of types of informal volunteerism on the left-hand side. These are just some examples designed to spark some ideas. While your network may look different than this, we encourage you to think of all the ways that you can lean on your existing community to support tasks that your existing staff and formal volunteers may not have the capacity to take on. As your community grows and your volunteer group grows, you'll have more resources to create more offerings. At this point, it's key to come back to what we discussed on our opening slide about your organization meeting the needs and creating solutions for the community. As a reminder, this is an iterative process because as you provide new offerings and solutions, the needs of your community will change. So it's important to always come back to understanding the community's needs. And here are a few examples of how you can understand your community's needs. You'll note that in-person forums will offer more qualitative information across a smaller population, whereas surveys will offer quantitative information across a larger population. So it's key to think about what type of information you're looking for as you design your information gathering plan. We also recommend you set up a communications plan to report back to your community members about how you are changing your approach and or creating new offerings based on their participation. This can help your community feel even more engaged and valued by your organization, knowing that you listen to them and that you're implementing, their recommendations. Now that you know your community's immediate needs, you're in a great place to develop offerings to meet their needs. As you think of solutions to meet your community's needs, we recommend you tap into key stakeholders in your community. These key stakeholders can help you identify and co-create solutions to the needs you identified on the last slide. But please note, your key stakeholder list doesn't have to exactly match this list. The key is that you're engaging different stakeholders in your community to get their unique perspectives so you can ultimately come to the most impactful solution. So whether you're engaging 2 individuals or 10 individuals, start where you are and you can always expand from there. We have also developed a list of example activities and offerings that you may want to create to maximize your impact. Feel free to take ideas from this list and brainstorm new ideas with your team and stakeholders. This also may be a good opportunity for you to reflect back about your existing offerings, their impact, and how they could be even more effective. You all already know this, but your organization does not need to be everything to everyone. As such, this is a great time to come back to prioritizing. During our work at BAAS, it is not uncommon for us to uncover 15 or more community needs, which can feel overwhelming. We recommend hyper-focusing needs that you can achievably create solutions for that are of high priority to the community, knowing that those other opportunities will still be there and will still present themselves, and maybe something that you want to tackle at a later time or that a sister organization may be tackling. So with that, we recommend understanding what offerings are available from your sister organizations, as well as materials they have in development. It may be that your community members say they need a resource that is already available, and it's just you working with that sister organization to make sure that it's in front of your community and that they're aware that it's available for them. This can also ensure that your community needs are met without you having to invest additional resources to create those materials. And again, as we mentioned earlier, avoids duplication. And please note that, this again is iterative as well. So as you create offerings and as the needs change, the offerings that you develop will be different as well. But start, it's really key. Just pick 1, 2, 3 items, start there, and you can build from there. While you develop solutions, we recommend that you consistently engage with your members to remind them of the existing offerings, as well as the offerings that are in development. It ensures they're aware of the offerings you already provide, as well as builds momentum for the new offerings that are coming to increase the uptake of your materials from day one. And that concludes our session for today. I hope you found it helpful as you look to grow your community. I hope you can take these checklists and edit them and use them as you see fit to best suit your organization. I hope you also have the opportunity to connect with other organizations on the call today to see what they found effective when seeking to grow their community. Together, we are even stronger. And with that, I'll pass it over to Lindsay to open the floor to Q&A.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. We appreciate you sharing your knowledge with the community. I'm looking right now to see if there's anything that's come through in the chat, or this would be a time for anybody to either raise their hand and I can allow them to talk, or enter your questions in the Q&A tab. I know it's a lot to process, and I think a lot of times this can be a daunting challenge for organizations, especially with organizations that have limited resources. I think that, we're happy to keep having this conversation with members, but I think that you shared so many techniques and so much information that there may be some time that people need to process. So if anybody has any questions, we'll keep it open for another few minutes. Just checking to see if anybody has a raised hand.
So meanwhile, if you allow me, Lindsay, I have a question that someone asked me on WhatsApp for Samantha. So how would you recommend, because some of the organizations present today, they have membership structures. That means like that they have patients that pay for membership, while others, they don't do this. anymore, but for those who have this membership, how would you encourage, for more people to become a member of a patient organization, considering that the times we live in and that it's a little bit more difficult to chip in for this kind of expenses?
I think when I think of the membership design and structure, it's really around, there are millions of people who sign up for Netflix and pay for Netflix every single month. And I think it's because you get value from Netflix. You appreciate, you're willing to pay $9, $12 a month so that you can watch the shows that they offer, and that you can, talk about the shows with your friends that they find interesting as well. And so I think if you're a community who has paid membership, it's really thinking about, if they're paying $5 a month or $10 a month or whatever that amount is, how are you delivering value to them worth that amount of money, where they will continue to choose to pay that for the services that you offer? And whether that's the community, they can't imagine their life without the community that they engage with, or the materials you provide. They don't want to stop that membership because they get so much value from it. So I would say, that's really the balance. And I think that's something a lot of companies are seeing right now as we see, Netflix increase their prices, et cetera. And people ask, is it worth $20 a month to me, $30 a month? So it's always just keeping in mind the amount that that you would be requesting for membership, and then the value you're delivering back for that amount. But that's a great question.
Okay, so I have a question from the Q&A that I will translate for you all, because in Spanish, someone is asking if, this is not very related to today's topic, but asking if it's ethical for patient organizations to accept to be funded by pharmaceutical industry, and what is the conflict of interest there. So I think we can answer that. Patient organizations are normally like the funding from a pharma industry is one of the few remaining fundings that exist for patient organizations and NGO. I think there is no conflict of interest, because as long as you set the boundaries with your sponsor, right? And pharmaceutical industry, they have a lot of compliance, a lot of regulations that they have to follow to make sure that that there is no conflict of interest. So I think as long as both parties are respecting those legal boundaries, there shouldn't be a problem. I don't know, Lindsay, if you want to.
No, absolutely. That's entirely correct. There's so many parameters in place for these relationships, and because there isn't a traditional method for a lot of patient advocacy groups to go in terms of grants, depending on where you live in the world. Sometimes it's true that the funding from pharmaceutical and medical device companies is really the only way to get your project work done. And there's a lot of rules of that engagement where that will prohibit there being any type of conflict of interest there.
I think something too is the regulations are different depending on what country you're in. So it's really important just to be making sure, if you're talking to a global counterpart versus a country specific counterpart at a pharmaceutical company, that you're making sure, if you are talking with global, that they're aware of the country specific regulations, or if not, that they bring in their country specific counterpart who can make sure that everything is being done compliantly. I know in the US it's compliant to talk about, different new therapeutics that might be coming on the market with patient advocacy groups where it's not compliant in some countries in Europe. So that's just something to keep in mind. But I think for what we always saw at Endocrine Society is really creating that firewall, right? And really making sure that if you are co-creating materials, or if you're creating materials and you've received funding from pharma, that those materials feel like you, and that you believe in them, and that you really back them. I think you are speaking on behalf of your community, and you are a reliable and trusted source of information. We hear this time and time again from our different communities around, where do you go for information? I go to my patient advocacy group. That is my trusted and reliable source. And so just making sure that you're continuing to stick to that, where you have your kind of lines in the sand around, we're happy to talk about this, but these are the ways that we're going to present. We're going to present all of the treatment options because we want everyone to be aware of everything that's available. Or we're going to provide all of the clinical trial options because we want everyone to have the opportunity to make the best decision for themselves when it comes to trials and treatment. So that's just something for you to consider, as you are receiving the funding and even requesting, sponsorships and grants is, what are you trying to solve and how do you make sure that you're staying true to yourself, even if you are receiving funding from an external party?
That's an excellent point.
I also would be interested if anyone feels comfortable in sharing different things you found to be effective in growing your advocacy community in the Q&A. I know we've heard from a few communities that they had one new person join and that new person kind of changed everything, where it was like really that snowball effect of we engaged one new person because one doctor provided them with one of our materials and now they're like one of the best volunteers we have at the organization and we cannot imagine our organization without them. So would love to hear if anyone's had any success stories in the chat.
And if anybody wants to share it, I can allow, if you raise your hand, I can allow you to talk or put that in the chat as well.
Okay, we have a shy crowd. No, I was texting Isaac because he wanted to speak, but maybe he has some internet.
Oh, that in the chat, it just went to hosts and panelists. What you just said, it sent in the chat.
Oh, I didn't. Okay, I didn't send to him.
No.
No, but because he's trying to. But
I can allow him to talk. Let's see.
That'd be great.
All right, Isaac, you, if you have connection, you are now able to talk with everyone. All right. There may be some connection issues there.
Yeah, the internet may not be good enough for this. No.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have anything that they wanted to share? All right, well, I thank you, Samantha, so much for joining us today. Thank you, everyone. We will be having our last GAAPP Academy of this season. Will be next month. We'll actually be a week earlier than our traditional format. We will be on 13th of July, same time. But we will be a week earlier next month. We hope you'll join us and stay tuned for details about that topic and our speaker. We're really excited to wrap up this season. Thanks for joining us and taking a little time out of your day. For some, I know it could be very late. Others, like me, it's earlier in the day. But it's always great to bring everyone together. And thank you again, Samantha, for joining us today and for supporting GAAPP. We really appreciate it. And if anybody has any questions, please contact GAAPP and we can put you in contact.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you so much for having me. And thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you. See everyone next month. Bye-bye.